Well, good afternoon. We made it. You made it. Thank you. Everybody else outside of this room is having a complete freak out right now. My goodness. We've learned a few things about ourselves as Seattleites in the last 12 hours. I think the average Seattleite only has 4 hours worth of food in their refrigerator. It's like a half empty bottle of vitamin water, a couple of beets, and some leftover quinoa. My goodness. I think that's my refrigerator, actually. What are we having for dinner tonight? But I just saw this tweet, too, from King 5 News. The lines, we've all seen the lines at the grocery store, right? But the lines at the pot shops in Seattle, longer than the grocery stores. People are freaking out. Not us. Not us. We are here, and it's great to see this room full. And it's my privilege to deliver the State of Downtown address. I want to acknowledge Zuhur Dreen and Zuhur Ahmed and the entire team at RC Hadreen, say that 3 times fast, for the completion of this incredible hotel. My family and I have been across the street living for the last 6.5 years, so we saw this thing take shape from day one, and it's great to be on the inside with this event. I want to acknowledge my family who's here today, my wife Erin, my kids Parker and Avery. Thanks to them for being here. And thank you to Chief Best and Mayor Durkin for their remarks and their leadership at a really exciting time in our city and also a challenging time. I really appreciate the mayor's remarks and Chief Best for being here. I want to acknowledge another great city partner who's here today. Gary Johnson will retire next month after 27 years serving the city of Seattle. Gary's been sort of our guy on the inside, our man on the inside, if you will, focused on downtown issues. He always got the stuff that no one else wanted to deal with because it was so complicated and difficult, but he's done incredible work over those many decades and been a great partner of us. And thank you to Peter for his remarks and for staying on time, Peter. Well done, that was great. No, but in all seriousness, I appreciate Peter's message that what happens out in the suburbs, in the neighborhoods outside of the downtown over the next 10, 20, 30 years matters a heck of a lot to this downtown. We are connected as a community. So thank you for your remarks, Peter, and reminding us to the key principles to building great cities. So this afternoon, I'd like to talk about some of the selected storylines, big highlights from 2018. I want to report on our Live, Work, Shop, Play dashboard. It's sort of our vital signs for downtown Seattle. And I want to highlight some of the big ideas and the big challenges we face as a city going forward. This is the 15th year of our State of Downtown event, as has been mentioned, and I'll offer the understatement of the afternoon. A lot has changed in those 15 years. I dug out a copy of the report from 2005, and it was a little thinner. You might have a hard time seeing it, but it was more of a brochure than a report back then. You compare this to what's in front of you. It's illustrative of the change that we've gone through. I want to put a finer point on some of that change. In 2005, 32 building projects were under construction. Today, 68. 2005, there were 1,200 apartment units under construction. Today, 7,600. And back then, there were 144 coffee shops in downtown Seattle. Today, 235. You thought the number would be higher, didn't you? I thought the number would be higher. Maybe we're under-coffeeed or something, I don't know. But what a difference 15 years makes. And what an incredible year we had back in 2018. And last year was typical of the change we've experienced over those last 15 years. I want to highlight a couple of the big storylines from the last 12 months. The convention center finally broke ground just outside of this hotel. Look at that impressive 7-acre site. Look at it up there, but also look at it when you get out in the lobby. There's an incredible view of it. You know, most cities put their convention centers sort of way off on the edge where it's really easy to develop. Not here. We chose the most complicated place to put it in the city of Seattle. Next to a freeway, next to some of our great theaters, some difficult soils, on top of a transit tunnel. I don't know how many different departments that the group had to work with to get this done, and I'm not going to list them because Matt Griffin will find me afterwards and tell me all the ones I forgot to list. But man, we're going to benefit incredibly from having this convention center addition in our downtown. It was also a year of experimentation in downtown Seattle. UPS and SDOT experimented with delivery by bike around the Pike Place Market. Uber, what we thought of as the car share company, has begun experimenting with bikes. We see the red ones out there on the streets. And Lime, what we've thought of as the bike and scooter share company, began experimenting with those darling little cars called Lime Pods. And then there were some experiments that fared better than others last year. I'll move right along. Last year was also the blockbuster trade between New York City and Seattle. And I think we need to step back on this one to take stock of who got what here. So New York got Robinson Cano, Edwin Diaz, that one really hurt actually, James Paxton, Come From Away, the musical that started here at the 5th and Seattle Rep, that's now on Broadway in New York. A Starbucks roastery opened in New York City late last year. And oh, by the way, they got 25,000 Amazon jobs. And what did we get in Seattle? A burger joint? The Shake Shack? Don't get me wrong, the Shake Shack's delicious. I actually went there a week or so ago, took some of our team. Delicious burgers, try the Shake Shack. And Justin Sheffield, the pitching prospect we got from New York, is gonna be fabulous. I'm true to the blue, I'm a big believer. We may be rebuilding, but we're rebuilding toward a great future. And let's get one thing straight, New York. There's only one Amazon headquarters, and it's right here in downtown Seattle. We also spruced up a longtime Seattle icon with a $100 million renovation of the Space Needle. Congratulations to the Wright family on this incredible investment, complete with 10 layers of a new glass floor, which I'm told is much stronger than the floor that was there before, so don't let that transparency freak you out. We also welcomed some additional icons to our city with the opening of Amazon Spheres last year. These are home now to 40,000 plants. I have great respect for Ron, the horticulturist there. There's not a dead flower or plant in the place. There's no brown, there's no holes in the leaves. It's incredible. I've owned like 5 plants in my adult life. They've all been given to me by my mom. They've all been succulents, which are impossible to kill. You just put them out there and they just grow and live. They're all dead. All of them are dead. So I have great respect for Ron and what he's doing there in those incredible new buildings. And we began the process of saying our goodbyes to the Alaskan Way Viaduct, planning for how we get around during the closure, and celebrating just last weekend the tunnel opening. And I don't know if you saw this, the last car to drive across the viaduct on the night of January 11th, when we all kind of came out of the woodwork to celebrate this thing going away, the last car to go across was a Subaru. That's so Seattle, right? And they had just come, this is true, they'd just come from REI where they were trying to return a pair of 3-year-old hiking boots that were dirty and worn. So Seattle. I don't know if they accepted them or not. I'm sure they did. But the opening of the tunnel, the closure, and then next week, the demolition of the viaduct really signals the new milestone here in the welcoming of this incredible new waterfront, a vision that's been ours for 20 years to reconnect downtown to Elliott Bay. These are just a few of the highlights that we will remember when we look back on 2018. We'll remember these colorful storylines and others. But I want to take a closer look at how we did in the last year and how we're creating a healthy and vibrant downtown. I want to turn our attention to our report card that we compile each year, focused on downtown's vital signs: live, work, shop, play. Let's begin with live. We've experienced 37% growth in our residential population since 2010. We have 82,000 people living downtown, one of the largest residential populations of any downtown across the country. And we've seen 89% growth in the number of kids living downtown. Today, 4,400 kids call downtown home. 27% of downtown's residents were born outside the US, a higher rate than what the rate is citywide and across the region. And consider this, nearly half of all the apartment buildings that you see out in downtown today, half of them came about after 2010. That gives you an idea of the growth that we've experienced over the last 8 years. And we're living in smaller spaces in our downtown. It was reported late last year by our great media partner, the Puget Sound Business Journal, that Seattle's now top Manhattan for the smallest apartments in the country. I think, as a downtown resident, I think too much is being made about this. Those of us who live downtown, we don't think of them as small spaces. These are efficient spaces. This is efficient living. Downtown is our living room. We get outside, and all of us, on behalf of my family, I can say, we love it. It is not too small downtown. Don't we? Don't we? Looking ahead in this category, 3,500 apartment units will be completed in 2019. We've got 1,000 condos under construction, which is triple the rate from 2017. And we're projecting 100,000 people will live downtown by 2028. Let's move on to work. In the work category, we topped 300,000 jobs in 2018 downtown for the first time ever. 39% growth in employment since 2010. And 20% of the office space developed in all the central business districts across the US in 2017 was developed downtown. 20%. That's a remarkable stat. And those buildings are not sitting empty. Office occupancies increased by 16 million square feet in the last decade in downtown. And to put that in perspective, that's the box the Space Needle came in. We're all familiar with that, the Safeco Tower. 16 million square feet is 22 of those buildings. That's what that looks like. And I think that also illustrates the importance of architectural variation in your downtown. I love that building, but I think we're good with one of them, right? Downtowns across the US have outpaced the suburbs, small cities, and rural areas in absolute and percent gain job growth over the last year. It used to be that companies would try to stuff as many amenities in their office as they could, from great cafeterias and game rooms, dry cleaners, but no longer. Today, downtown is viewed as the ultimate office amenity. It's where companies and workers want to be for very good reason. Let's turn our attention to the shop category. We had 38% growth in retail spending in downtown in 2010. $1.6 billion was spent in our downtown last year, the equivalent of all the retail spending in the city of Bellevue. And don't let anybody tell you that Seattle doesn't have any fashion sense. 41% of all the spending on retail in the downtown was spent on clothing and apparel, by far the largest category. And as we look ahead, we see Pacific Place underway with a multi-million-dollar renovation of the shopping center, which is going to include a reimagined entrance on Pine Street, a complete remake of the interior, and a brand new multi-story entrance on 7th and Olive, just a few blocks from where we are right here. This is going to be a phenomenal burst of energy into our retail core. Turning our attention to the play category, we've seen 63% growth in spending on arts, entertainment, sports, and food in the downtown since 2010. Some of the big storylines in this category over the last year was the incredible run that Hamilton had at the Paramount. You were just not in the in crowd if you didn't see Hamilton. The Storm bringing home their third world championship to Seattle. And a major wave of new restaurants. 125 new restaurants opened in the downtown. And everybody is excited about all these new restaurants adding to our rich food scene, except the people that own the current restaurants in downtown. And number 126 will open here soon, with Chef Morimoto opening a new restaurant in the Publix Hotel in the International District in just a few months. You know, we used to track the ratio of restaurants to bars in the downtown, but with all these new restaurants, the ratio has gotten totally out of whack, so we stopped even looking at it. It's not to say that we haven't opened our fair share of fitness studios and gyms and bar places and spinning classes and all of that. We have. And I don't know if you saw this new place that opened in October on 2nd Avenue between Stewart and Virginia. I can't stop talking about this place. It's called Stretch 22. The folks who've been around me this week are sick of me talking about this, but let me talk about it a little bit. It's an assisted stretching studio. They do the stretching for you. I'm I went on Sunday just before the Super Bowl. I wanted to get limber before the game. And it was amazing. And as I was laying there, and my stretchologist was working on my hammy here, I had this idea of how could you apply this to a spinning studio? And I had this idea for Spin for Me. This is how this would work. I go to spinning classes with my wife occasionally, and I find it hard, tiring, difficult. I get really sweaty. So what about this? An assisted spinning studio. So you'd get on that bike just like you would at a normal class, but on the right side, you'd have a spinologist, and they would have your right leg and be moving it like this. And then on the left side, you'd have your other spinologist, and they would be doing that. And then you'd have a third spinologist to towel you off as you perspired. I'll be looking for investors out in the lobby if anybody is interested in this. And another big storyline in the play category. We're getting a hockey team. The NHL is coming to Seattle. Now, they don't have a name yet, but I was talking with Mari Harita from NHL Seattle, who's here today, and I think she said that we could throw out a few, whichever one got the loudest applause, they would run with, and begin printing jerseys tomorrow. She's shaking her head violently, no. Well, then why don't you just come up here and tell us what it is? The stage is yours. No? I'm getting that head shake. No, again, we'll hear soon enough, I think. Hockey and then the NBA to follow are going to add to this incredible, rich concentration of professional sports that we have in our downtown. We are so fortunate to have our arenas and stadiums and our sports teams so close to the heart of the downtown. In so many cities, the arena is way out on the edge, the stadium's way out on the edge, right? Surrounded by parking lots. They don't do much for the center of the city. We don't have that here. It's incredible. I grew up going to Buffalo Bills games at Rich Stadium, which is about 10 miles outside of downtown Buffalo in Orchard Park, New York. For 6 months of the year, Rich Stadium is surrounded by a big asphalt parking lot. The other half of the year, it's surrounded by a big asphalt parking lot with a sheet of ice on top of it. And this was the fan experience that I had at those games. That's me in the middle, or on the edge or something. But in all seriousness, we are going to continue to benefit from the NHL, NBA to follow, being right here in the heart of our city. And I mentioned the concentration of sports in our downtown, but the concentration of our arts and cultural institutions right in our downtown is also just phenomenal. We should never take this for granted. I've spent a good amount of time with some of the leaders of our arts and cultural institutions over the last year, and I got to tell you, all this transportation and construction, which is going to be great, is difficult for them and their patrons, members, subscribers getting into theaters, performing arts venues and others. We all got to do our part to take care of these folks, go see a show, go to the theater. We can't take our arts and cultural sector for granted. So our report card, our Live, Work, Shop, Play report card, indicates that we are seeing healthy progress in our downtown. We're gaining market share in the region across many of these categories we look at: residential growth, employment growth, retail. And we're outperforming many of our peer downtowns across the country. But I want to step back from the details for just a moment and consider the bigger picture and consider some of the keys to sustaining our success as a city. We've had, no doubt, great progress and momentum in our downtown, incredible momentum over the last decade. And we're seeing efforts that began 10 and 20 years ago begin to take shape, from the removal and demolition of the viaduct and the waterfront realization, which has been a 15-plus year endeavor, to the convention center finally breaking ground, which will welcome 400,000 conventioneers on an annual basis on top of those that are already coming into our downtown. And they'll spend $19 million annually in our city. To the rezoning of the Denny Triangle in South Lake Union that really took shape in 2006 and 2007, which has now allowed us to welcome thousands of new jobs, residents, and small businesses to this area of town that was mostly full of surface parking lots and three-story motels, and zoning that didn't allow a lot more than that. Each of these major moves took vision, partnership between the public and private sectors, and a heck of a lot of perseverance. And the result? The result is that we now have one of the most enviable downtowns across North America. We have this incredible mix of residential, employment, arts, culture, sports, and this incredible food scene. But downtowns and cities have always been fragile places. Blake Nordstrom would always remind us of this. Say, keep your eyes over the horizon. Continue to work to stay current and relevant as a downtown, as a city. Take nothing for granted. And Blake and his family knew that. They watched our downtown evolve over 100 years. They knew what vulnerability looked like. I took a trip back to Buffalo, New York over the holidays, and I spent some time in their downtown. Buffalo was a city of 600,000 people in its heyday. I spent a couple days before Christmas and a couple hours touring that downtown. What I saw then was a lot of empty streets, a lot of empty sidewalks, and empty retail. And the population in Buffalo, New York today is 250,000, and it continues to decline. Now, we don't have the challenges that Buffalo faces, no question. But I believe we are at a key juncture in our downtown, and we face increasing competition from urban areas across the country and across the world who are getting up every day to take what we've got here. And we face some big challenges and some key questions to sustaining our success, and I want to address them briefly. Number one, housing. Peter talked about the imbalance in the Bay Area. We've got our own imbalance here. Since 2010, 127,000 jobs were created in the city of Seattle, but just 38,000 housing units. That math doesn't work. That imbalance has meant longer commutes and a higher cost of living for thousands of folks who work in Seattle. And I believe this imbalance threatens the resiliency of our downtown and our city. And the zoning changes that are before the City Council this month are an important first step, but not the only answer. And we saw some of the coverage on this morning in the Seattle Times. And we're already hearing some of the concerns about what this will mean for livability in some of our existing neighborhoods. What wasn't covered in that story this morning is the impacts to livability for the mom who's a medical assistant on First Hill, who's spending 2.5 hours in her car coming from Covington to drop her kid at childcare in Kent to get to her job at First Hill, only to turn around and do that again. We should care about her livability too. It matters to our downtown and our entire city. So we have to get after this issue of housing. Again, the legislation in front of the council, an important first step. There's much more work to do. Number two, space. I've reported today on our incredible employment growth over the last decade in downtown Seattle. We've outpaced the city projections for job growth in the downtown by 4 times over. And that's all great news, but we're running out of space. We've filled up the Denny Triangle largely, same with South Lake Union. Office and commercial sites are few and far between in our downtown. And we have so many economic advantages in this city, in our downtown, and in the region. This incredibly educated workforce. We have this natural beauty and incredible quality of life that's drawing people here from across the world. And we have major footholds in industries of the future, cloud computing, AI, VR. So the lack of available space to welcome the jobs of our future in our downtown, that should not be what holds us back from creating more economic opportunity in our city. But that's the threat we face if we don't get after this, if we don't plan 10, 20 years down the line for where those jobs can be in our downtown. We've got to get after this. Number 3, walkability. Walkability has been a big winner for cities in the 21st century. And with our unparalleled natural beauty surrounding downtown Seattle, I think we can offer the best walking experience in the country. The best place to be a pedestrian, the most interesting, delightful, clean, safe place to walk in the nation. And we're taking a big step, no doubt, with the removal of the viaduct and creating 20 acres of recreation space and promenades and trails and places to bike. This is an important first step. We have more work to do. 3rd Avenue, Interstate 5, these are areas we avoid walking along, crossing. And great downtowns should not have anywhere you avoid walking. We've got work to do on both these fronts to make downtown the best place to walk in North America. Number 4, welcoming neighborhoods. We want downtown to be everybody's neighborhood, a place that you feel welcome and safe and secure. But today in Seattle and in downtown and some of the other neighborhoods outside of downtown, in many ways we become incapable of distinguishing between those who are on our streets in need of help, who are homeless, who need a hand up, and those on our streets who are just out to hand out more trouble. We've been incapable in many ways of distinguishing between the two and developing separate strategies. And we all see this. Individuals that are cycling through the system, that are out breaking into cars, impacting small businesses, not getting the help they need. They're having a big impact. They're having huge costs. And we need to do a better job of developing plans for them that are accountable, that make a difference, that get them the help they need, but also give some relief to the neighborhoods that they're having an impact on. We've got to help the folks that need a helping hand. For the folks that are just out there handing out a bunch of trouble in our neighborhoods, we need an answer for them too. Each of these challenges that I mentioned are difficult and complex. We're not alone as a downtown in facing them. They've come with the success we've had in many cases. And I think to be successful, we must renew the spirit of partnership between the public, private, and nonprofit sector in our city. The deep dysfunction that we all witness at the federal level on a daily basis demands higher functioning partnerships at the local level between nonprofits, the private sector, and the public sector. And I think the cities that figure this out best are going to be best positioned in the 21st century to make headway on these challenges that I just mentioned. And this has been in our history as a city. This is in our DNA. We can do this. We've done it. You look at the great things that have been accomplished across this city, and they all trace back to working together in those partnerships. And we need to get back after that as a city. Today, we've added breakout sessions to help energize and continue our civic conversation on these challenges and others, as well as some opportunities in our vision for Seattle. And I hope you'll join in these discussions. There's still an opportunity to register. Don't let the snow scare you. It's not going to come till 9 o'clock. We all know that. We're here. So take part in those breakouts and the happy hour as well. Michelle Obama had to cancel her event down in Tacoma, as we all know, but I wanted to just reference the title of her book, her best-selling book, which I think we're all aware of, Becoming. I think it's an appropriate concept to apply to our downtown as well. We are in this continual state of becoming, working together to shape and constantly renew our downtown for all who want to live, work, shop, and play here. I appreciate you being here today, your involvement and investment in our organization. Thank you very much.